Thank you for joining us this beautiful Saturday morning, the last of 2022. You will know from interacting with radio and television that the 31st of December is a very important day in the year of a broadcasting station, whether it is a radio or television. On the 31st of December, there is what is loosely referred to as looking back. So what are the things that shaped the outgoing year? Many stations are going to be doing, almost all stations are going to be doing that today. Of course, we are not going to be left out. So we're going to be looking at the stories that shaped 2022. Of course, a lot of things will come to your mind. The train attack, the Abuja-Kaduna train attack, the floods, what happened to the... what's his name now? The Accountant General of the Federation, the Abakari story. All kinds of things will come to your mind, but we'll just take a few that we consider as most important among the many things that come to your mind when you think about 2022. And to look at those things with us this morning, it's my pleasure to welcome Professor of Strategy and Development and also an author. He's written a book called The Epistles. The Epistles, yes. Reflections on Nigeria. Professor Anthony Killer. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to be here.
We also have a senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Dapo Akinyosun. Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you for joining us this morning. And compliments to both of you.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm sure all kinds of incidents come to your mind when you think about 2022, but let's start by looking at the terrorist attack. We had heard of the activities of terrorists literally all over Nigeria, not just in the north anymore. And then this train thing happened. It was the first of its kind in Nigeria. It sent shockwaves through the country. And those poor people were in captivity for several months, Professor. Let's talk about that.
Well, it's a very sad thing you start from. It's sad in terms of administration and it's sad on a human level because, let's read from right to left. You say they were there for months. And I want to remind our viewers, on the surface, it's clear to know that it's sad to be in captivity for months. But I want to remind our viewers that those months, which we say, for the families and indeed those in captivity, every day seemed like a month to them. So when we say nominally a month, in terms of emotions, in terms of feeling, it sounded like years for them. It's a very, very painful thing. And, that is really on a human side of things. In terms of administration, we as a collective, it's a failure, it's a challenge of we as a people, because that tragedy was a foretold tragedy that was going to happen. The terrorists were getting nearer to the nerves, to nerve of power. And a lot of things played out. There was argument that it could have been averted if they had put security things. At some point, somebody said, no, the request for security did not follow due process, and it wasn't clear. But the fact is, that is administration. We, the people, have been kidnapped, have been robbed, and we did not have the facility. And it's important for us to learn to say we've been kidnapped, we've been robbed, not they. Because you see, part of the reason why we lack the sense of urgency and the impetus to fully intervene is the idea that we assume this thing is happening in a part of the country. If we want to overcome the issue of insecurity moving forward, we need to realize that an attack in one village of Nigeria is an attack on the whole of Nigeria. And indeed, whether it's asymmetrical, whether it's foreign, we need to realize the country is at war. We're not dealing with some issues. I have argued elsewhere that the commander-in-chief needs to come out and say we're at war. Why? For two reasons. One, because it shows a sense of understanding of the gravity of the situation. And I take this back to anybody in our families and in our work. If you don't understand the gravity of the situation, you can never overcome it. You need to understand that this is what I'm dealing with. Whether it's a lax, incompetent staff, whether it's a genius, whether it's financial crisis, whatever you're dealing with, whether it's a wayward child or a creative child, you need to understand the gravity of what you're dealing with. Then that will then allow you to deal with. The other thing is that once you admit that you're at war, it will allow you to take measures that under normal administrative circumstances, you might not be willing to take. So it's crucial for us to deal with things that way. But let's wrap it up in a good way, because I'm really trying, to be optimistic in the new year coming on. To say that ultimately it's a good thing that before the end of the year, the trains were back.
Okay.
That really is opened.
Okay. Mr. Akinashon.
It's just quite sad to say, I'm going back home. I'm going to work in Kaduna. And the journey ends abruptly and you find yourself in captivity for months on end. And I just looked at the human pain and suffering that went with it. I have given up a lot of road travel now just for the fear of getting captured.
Most Nigerians have.
Because in the horror stories that you hear can be mind-boggling. It shows that a lot more can be done with our security infrastructure. We've had a lot of stories about amounts of money being put into security. But the question is, what happens to it? How are the people who are supposed to be the recipients? You see, we have a lot of soldiers and policemen who are killed every day, and nothing gets said about it. How do we motivate them? How do we energize them? How do we re-engineer? And we should be looking at the SADA. As I said earlier, the incident has occurred. It's behind. But how do we prevent it going forward? It's heartwarming that it has reduced towards the end of the year. But however, it is how do we put a stop to it? And I think it comes from re-engineering and restructuring the whole security apparatus. It goes beyond just one arm of the forces, because a lot of money goes into it every year. But where's the result?
Let me stay with you, Sakosha, and ask. You're a lawyer. It's not the first time we're having such incidences in the north, and sadly, some of the issues lined up, which my colleague Alera has mentioned, a good number of them happened in the north. And not a few elites in the north have spoken about the level of poverty in the north. Is this, or these issues, are these issues, one way or the other, in any way suggesting that as a state, we do not have respect for our people in the north?
Well, sadly, most of the leadership and it would appear that most of the security forces are also from the northern part of Nigeria. Because you find that they embrace the security much earlier than the people from the south. If you take a roll call generally, you find that there are more northerners in all the arms of security. That could come from the fact that there are 19 states or so out of the 36 that come from there. So if you are going to do ratio, you will find that they already have more people that are there. But then you ask yourself, if most of the defense comes from there, most of the extremely wealthy people come from that part of the world, then you ask yourself, how come that wealth is not translated into the poorer people there? And it seems like until there is a rejig of the system, you remember the former MF Kano did mention something about it. Sanusi did say, this poverty in the north. Obviously, until that issue is dealt with, it will not go away. You could see Jonathan tried this Almajiri schools and things to at least educate and open up the minds of the people. But it appears as if there is a resistance to even opening up. I have been kidnapped in Niger State before, and I had to come out with, I gave the spare tire of my car, I gave all the cash I had. It was in the early days, then it wasn't this demanding. But I was just amazed. That was the first time I really saw poverty in the elements. I come from the Southwest. I've seen poor people, but when I saw the poverty in the places I was taken to when I was being moved from one place to the other, I was amazed. I mean, people can be this poor. And for many of us who are from this part of the world, we can't imagine the level of poverty and the abjectness of it. And it just beat my imagination. That why is it taking us so long to address it?
Well, Prof, I'm going to ask you the same question, especially in the light of the multidimensional poverty index that the federal government itself came up with. It's not something that just suddenly happened on us.
No.
It's not something that happened over 7 years ago.
No.
It's not even something that started before the Fourth Republic. It's something that's literally been with us over the years, and we just...
It seems to be a cultural thing too.
Yes. You know, it's like if some people are not down, you cannot really govern them and all of those things. To you, multidimensional government said, of course you understand it better than anyone. To you, was it deliberate? Do you see us taking any pragmatic... I'm trying to be as positive as you want to be, you know, but is this something that is deliberately done or it is accidental over the years?
Let us look at it this way before we go to the active cause of it. Let us establish that in development, there's a correlation between emancipation, middle class, and collective responsibility. Where there is no mass emancipation, where there is no strong middle class, what you tend to find is a world of extremes, i.e., you would have some very rich, powerful people and a lot of, actually, you have a few very rich, powerful people and a lot of very poor, unenlightened people.
Which is what we have in Nigeria.
Which is what we have in Nigeria. Now, I want to take you to something. That scenario we have in Nigeria happens in society where blood, nepotism, luck trumps merit. It's very important we look at that thing because we overlook it. The societies where most people are in the middle, where there are very few rich people but also very poor people, where everybody's just doing fine, tends to be a society based on merit. It tends to be a society where productivity trumps title, where activity trumps birth. And we go to the point. We now ask ourselves, are people poor or are they impoverished?
What's the difference?
The difference is a lot, and that's the cause. You see, people are poor when they're not able to turn their productivity to prosperity. People are impoverished when they are deliberately kept so. Because the resources that ought to go to their school, to their hospital, to their general well-being is being siphoned by some. It is so because those who ought to become head of police stations, generals, head of intelligence, by merit, are not allowed to get there. Of course,
so most Nigerians in this category are therefore impoverished, if we're going by your definition.
By my definition. That's actually all of Nigeria. Actually, and you see, we say the whole of Nigeria today. Let's be clear. In the story of humanity, you know, I laugh when we talk about the goodness of man. Goodness of man is overrated. You know, man is evil because we're all really descendants of murderers, immigrants, and people who have adapted. The meek one died because they just walked over them. It's the theory of evolution. All over the world, the trajectory of humanity has always been to oppress, to subdue, because of greed, to take away from the weak. It is revolution, enlightenment, some kind of ethos that has fought those who can and say, no, we're not going to do this anymore.
And consequently, governments and systems are set up
to do that, yes.
Which raises this question that I'd like to ask you, Mr. Akyonshu. There's this vexed conversation, and it's really... Okay, let me be nice. I want to be as positive as you today. It's a little concerning when you hear some arguments for or against. There are those who believe that the lowest level of government, which is the local government system, is one, the first line of defense against insecurity, and two, also an energizer for at least some measure of welfare or well-being for the people. But when we hear arguments like there is no such thing as third tier of government, the autonomy for local government system is not constitutional, and all those things, I just wonder, what is your take? Because while growing up, we had environmental officers come, and they didn't come from the federal government. They didn't even come from the state government. They came from the local government, of offices. Second Republic, the same thing. I was living in Mushin, and God help you if your street or your compound was dirty. But what we have now, even the Third Republic, it was very, very strong. I remember with joy, the Lagos Island government of Adeniji Adele. Yeah. Oh, yes. They had a massive IGR system as a local government. They had this gold bus. I still see some of them in relics, but hey, they still exist. So, what's your take on this whole conversation that's stalled the constitution amendment process till now?
Sorry, but I cannot miss this shot. But seeing so many republics makes us feel you're so old.
I'm a young man.
My God.
I'm a young man.
History.
But speaking realistically, what you have seen is that there's been an erosion of all those arms, particularly the third level of governance. Should it be autonomous? How did it operate before when they were not autonomous? It worked somehow. And so all this excuse, using the Constitution to say it works, it doesn't work, I think the excuses. The most important thing is that we need to get governance down to that level. And whosoever has been given that duty has to find a way to fix it.
And to get it done.
SAN.
For the first time in the last week, in a while, I went through the streets of Bariga recently, and I was amazed at the number of streets that have been tarred there.
Yeah.
It's the same problem. Street, concrete, interlocking tiles in many of the back streets. Google Map took me there, and I was amazed at what I saw.
Yeah.
That's why Google Map could see it.
Yes.
That's why I saw it.
So it shows me that, look, if you want this thing to work, let's stop making excuses. If you have a duty, if you cannot do it, then get out of the way. But don't tell us that the Constitution doesn't empower you or whatever it is. Of course, I'm a lawyer. I know that we should follow the law. However, the law is that if you take a job, then do it.
But Mr. Akiasho, many state houses of assembly are against the autonomy of the local government.
Well, whether they're against it in terms of how the local government leaders themselves tend to become over-ambitious, over-powerful. I begin to see them become lords unto themselves. But the important thing is that as long as the House of Assembly stop at their own duty of checking them, what they're supposed to do is to have an oversight and see they're doing what they're doing. You're not supposed to be a stop or to prevent them from doing it. You're supposed to check what they're doing and see they're doing it right.
Okay. Now, let's move away from the terrorist attack. Let's go to the massive flooding that we had. I mean, if my memory serves me right, the flooding of 2022 is supposed to be the worst that Nigeria has ever seen. So the rainy season is going to come again. It is not something that happened on us without us being aware it was coming. And we know it's going to come again because this thing is a cycle. To your mind, have we been preparing for the next rainy season to ensure that this doesn't happen again? Thousands lost their lives, lost their homes in the flooding of 2022.
I think we kind of localize this issue of flooding and don't pay attention to what is going on around the world. I think this is all tied to this issue of global warming.
Yes.
Which has not been given the kind of attention or energy that it deserves. We can prepare for the worst, but when the worst that happens far It outstrips what we have prepared for. It makes what we have done negligible. I mean, I was reading in the newspaper, someone was trapped in her car in the US, and she was tweeting to people and communicating with her family till she froze to death in the snow.
Oh, God.
Now, that is a country where they are prepared to deal with these issues, but it just goes too far. So what are we doing in our own little bit to attend to this climate change? The pure water you drink, the little bottles of Ragolis that we throw away and throw into the gutter, all have an effect ultimately. And until there is a mass education of how we can take steps to also curtail the global warming, we will all be victims of it. But yes, our emergency responders can do better. Our emergency response is sometimes delayed, but it depends more on humanitarian assistance, what people can give, rather than what is our own level of preparedness to fight with it.
But that raises a question. Going by what Alero said, Prof, we were prepared, rather, we got the information well ahead. 365 days in a year, we were told that we had more than 200 days
of heavy rainfall.
I'm not good in maths, but I'm very, very sure that's more than half.
More than half.
So if that is, we knew it was going to happen, we knew it was going to be bad, we knew it was going to be worse. It's not like it's the first time we're going to be having such severity. In 2012, we had something similar. And there were many people who quoted the fact that this is the worst in 10 years. So we knew this could happen. More than 200 days of rain in 1 year. I mean, that really is something. So we knew it was going to happen. So going by what Mr. Akiosho said, what could have been done that was not done?
Well, I think, you see, this is lack of good administration governance, but underlining it is a vision and the vigor to do things the right way. The key to disasters like this is prevention. And where we are, I understand when we say we have to look at the global context and everything, but you see where we are, the kind of problems we're grappling with is almost an insult to progress humanity has made. You know, it's almost an affront to the development that science has made. Because in reality, the flood that we had, as you rightly say, was predicted. We were told that we're going to have X number of times more than we have. What have we done? Nothing. So what should we do? We need to do three things. 3 E's. We need to educate, we need to engage, and we need to engineer. So we need to build things like the problem we had with the Cameroon neighbors. Let's not forget that. We say this thing as if just water came out. We had an agreement with a neighboring country to build some infrastructure in dam, which we did not build. They did theirs, the open trouble started. Let's not pretend it's one kind of God-sent act. It's man-made, this one. Let's be very clear about that. And I believe, and this is where much as positive I want to be, the issue of local government is vexatious. I believe that, well, I'm an outlier. Left to me, the most important arm of government should be local government. Because that is where the real administration of day-to-day runs.
Yeah.
The other things like general defense and maybe foreign affairs can be at the center. The rest should be lower. So I believe that the local government should be in charge of managing. They should be in charge of conceiving the policy for disaster management in the local government, and then they should be in charge of implementing it. Perhaps agencies can be elsewhere, but the conception and implementation should be at local government
Well, it's
level.
not like we don't have any example, Prof.
Yeah.
As Mr. Akiosho said the other time, when you get a job, do it.
Yeah.
The example of Lagos, for instance, is one that is significant. Oh, God, before the Bar Beach was treated the way it was treated, such that we don't have to make, right now we'll probably have Victoria Island that is now an island indeed because there would be no
way
land,
to get there,
whatsoever. So, but the government of the day at some time was able to deal with these things. So if the job of whoever is supposed to do this, my point is, yes, the local government should be the epicenter of governance indeed. However, it's not like we don't have an example of states being able to do it. The example of Lagos is one.
But you see, that's the thing. We have to be very careful. You cannot govern the general on exceptions. You see, just because one person is able to do things, what you need is a system. Yeah. Until the system works, you're going to have exceptions that cannot be replicated.
But you spoke about vision the other time.
Yes.
But should visions be exceptional, or should they be endemic?
They should be endemic, but they should be cascaded. But you see, the vision that works is a vision that builds systems. That is the whole point. And what we're missing, we talk about the local government, but in reality, to tell people not to throw plastic sachets and bottles on the road is something that starts from the school. We go back to a level. You see, we are looking up, whereas most of the problem are down. A lot of time, if you want to change the society, you start from the school, you start from the community. When Obafemi Awolowo was doing his project in the 50s, one of the things in his hidden notes was the idea that you're going to turn the whole society, he said, to an open school. What he meant was that get people in school, get the children to go back home to tell their parents, teachers said we shouldn't do it this way again. And you are going to educate the whole society. What was he trying to do? Was trying to move us from a rural primordial society to a modern society. We have people on our streets today that you can see from the way they drive that they're more stupid than wicked, because they have no clue of the traffic laws. They have no clue, even sometimes the self-preservation, because otherwise, why would somebody on a bike, on a tricycle, going as if he's going to cross somebody in an SUV? You can see that really there, what is at play is not greed or wickedness. It's actually stupidity.
And suicide mission, perhaps.
Well, the Greeks say when you're stupid enough, you end up killing yourself. That's the way it goes. So what that tells us that we need to go back to education in our churches, in our schools, in our communities. And let me use this opportunity, something that's very clear to me, the road, which is going to be my mission in 23. Let me use this opportunity to appeal to our church leaders to, if they can, dedicate a Sunday every quarter to the concept of the Christian driver.
Or a Muslim driver.
Or a Muslim driver. A religious driver. In our churches, in our mosques, in all temples. Maybe it will help us a bit, because funny enough, the road is a metaphor of people's life. The way people behave on the road, you'll understand the society.
Perhaps one example that might help people, Prof, is just to tell them, okay, what if the Prophet Muhammad was with you in the car? Would you drive the way you are driving?
What those are the things. Exactly. What if Jesus would you? Would you behave that way? Those are the kind of very good that we need to pick up. And you see, and the thing is this: you talk of vision. The governors, we're looking up. I know we'll get to election, but let's just hint now. We're looking up as looking down. Everyone's looking at the president again in this country. Whereas there's a lot happening on that before you get to the presidency.
Yes, Mr. Akiosho. A lot of Nigerians felt embarrassed when our super cop was arrested, when our accountant general was arrested. People who are supposed to be looking after us, looking after the well-being of Nigerians, and the accountant general supposed to be looking after our commonwealth, was the one caught with his fingers in the till.
Not fingers, both hands.
Both hands.
Because you can't take that
amount of money
of billions
with fingers. Your whole arm, you packed it.
Coming from an SAN.
But you see, and it all boils down to this issue of dealing with corruption. Because if there was punishment for bad behavior, people would tend to behave much better. What you find is that even in instances where people have been caught and imprisoned, you find the system forgiving them and giving waivers and giving pardon. And I wonder, what is the essence of this pattern? Are we saying we cannot find enough people?
True.
But it goes back to, how is justice administered? How quickly is it? And sometimes I feel a sense of responsibility that lawyers are deployed to delay justice.
I'm glad you
and
do.
Sometimes even I go to courts and I see how technicalities are thrown in to prevent or to delay justice. And until we all take responsibility and say, we need to ensure that justice is not only seen to be delivered, it's also delivered quickly. If the man who has put both hands in the tills can go through speedy trial and people can see within the same space of time that he has received a sentence and he has ended up in Kuje prison. Whether the breakout is another matter entirely.
But let me get there first.
But let's get people in there within quick time. You will see that people will be a bit more responsive.
But my apologies, sir. How significantly would that address anything? I mean, I agree with you. I mean, a good number of people would agree with you that if impunity continues to persist, I mean, how much difference can we make? Take the example, for instance, of this oil, what do we call it now?
Oil
theft, over the years. Over the years, we heard that information from the NNPC GMD, that's NNPCL, that we've not known for 30-something years. I was overgasted and flabbergasted. Sorry. the reverse. So, I mean, it was very, very interesting to hear that. So, is it possible in this day and age that such a thing would happen? I'm trying to find the correlation between the hands and the fingers in the tail and the fingers in the pot. Because the crude oil is definitely something, I mean, we hear about super tankers. That's some pot.
No, you see, I mean, that is even a totally embarrassing thing, because the amount of crude that has been stolen
is more than what the country is exporting.
So wonder who is stealing. I mean, the owners begin to feel like the thieves, because if you are getting a little out of what is going out there, you begin to wonder who's the thief and who's the owner. But all that still goes back to and there's a lot of complicity involved in it.
Absolutely.
The military who are supposed to be defending it have been fingered. The officials of the IOCs who are pumping this crude out and can see there's a significant drop in the volumes being pumped and what is being received. Also know, and all over the world, there are ways of tracking and monitoring what you send, what you drill, and what reaches you eventually. So there's a lot of complicity in this. And that still goes back to what I'm saying, that if people are speedily punished for it, okay, now we found out who are the people responsible. There's an investigation that comes out quickly, and you can see a few people being committed to prison and not go to court and take one long adjournment after the other. And by the way, I'm not blaming the judges for the long adjournments, but we just need to find a lot more people to go into that system. Because I was in the Federal High Court recently, and I know in Lagos, the judges in the Lagos bench have over 1,000 cases on their dockets each. Live, active cases. So you wonder, how are you going to get a judge to deal
with such things,
with these things in depth?
Advocate, I know you don't want to blame the judges. Let me help you blame the judges. Let me boldly, publicly say that I blame the judges for the situation we are in Nigeria for a lot of things. Very simple reason. Look, it is the duty of lawyers to find technicalities in court to try to help their client. But it is also the duty, and I speak here as a jurist, it is also the duty of the judge to go beyond technicalities and apply common sense to say, is this man lying? Is he trying to get away with it? To judge. Denning said at the end of it all, it is common sense that trumps any technicality. Sometimes our judges, I don't know.
Just quoted?
You see, even when there's common sense being applied, there's a system that has to be followed, unfortunately. If I'm coming to court to say absolute nonsense, under the right of fair hearing, the court still has to listen to me and give me a chance to say my nonsense. So even if I'm saying absolute rubbish, it will hear me first before reaching a decision. Any decision that is made without that, some of the areas I have canvassed that I think would help us is that stop all this interlocutory appeals. Finish a case at one level before you go up to all those appeals. And those are areas where the law can be tweaked a bit, that is left to the legislature to say, no, we will not be allowing interlocutory appeals.
But you see, I agree with you.
If a judge says, I have to hear him, and he hears all that quickly, he will still be done. But when a judge has 1,000 cases, there's no way he will finish all those cases.
You see, I agree with you. What I'm saying is this. Every year we have the beginning of the judicial year. My position is that the Chief Justice of the Federation, the Minister for Justice, should sit down together and say, what is our present situation? We have judges with 1,000 dockets in their hand. We have this new trend, old or new trend, of people using technicalities to get away with crime. And what is the public feeling about it? We go back to vision. So therefore, what do we do about it? And I say these things without claiming credit for particular originality. It is something that's happened elsewhere in the world and in history, where they sat down to say, this is the problem we have, how do we deal with it? You see, all these things are social constructs. They're not mountains, they're monuments. If we decide at some point that no matter how complicated a case is, we have a time limit for it, by which a case will finish, so it's going to be. You have to split things up. I argue, for example, the little things you can do. I argue that every court in Nigeria should have adjoining hospital or sick bay, given that people tend to fall sick when they have cases. So that let them not. And if they are sick, go to their cells and finish that case. Not because you're sick, you disappear. And there's another thing that I think is very important we look. We look at people who steal billion and they find them hundreds of thousands of millions. It doesn't make sense. I think one of the judicial reforms that should be done is that if somebody steals 1,000 naira, let us make sure we get back all the 1,000 naira.
With interest.
With interest. There you go. And if any other punishment is going to be extra, not that I've read cases where people, I look at it and say, but the person has stolen hundreds of millions. Why are you finding him so and so? I am not even care. Contrary to what we might think. The law
gives us
then we need to change that law. We need to change that
now,
law.
Who are the people that are going to change the laws? Is the politicians. So let's talk about them for a bit.
Yes.
I'm sorry, we're going quickly running out of time. Mr. Kioshu, I think this whole gale of I want to be president started in January of the outgoing year. And a number of people, of course, had declared, well, subliminally indicated interests. But it was like one person blew the lid open at the beginning of the year. And of course, we had so many declarations and I don't even have the words or the political lexicon to add all of these things.
Jamboree.
So where you stand, the Prof mentioned the other time that we all seem to be looking up.
Whereas we should be
paying a little more attention to what's happening closer to us. Let's start from there. As we, venture towards 2023 elections, we're looking up. Are we ignoring, or I don't have the second word, ignoring what's happening down there, overtly or covertly?
Definitely, like you said, there's a lot of attention paid to who is Mr. President or who becomes Mr. President, without checking who is going to be my local government chairman. Many of us don't even know who our local government chairman is till today. We don't bother about the elections because
I used to. Now I don't.
Yeah, so many of us just let it slide. And I think it is important to engage from that level. But of course, who becomes Mr. President also goes a long way in determining the body language you will read from the top. Because I believe the body language from the top always goes a long way in affecting how everybody behaves down the line. Once you see the man at the top is not going to take this, and he moves and acts decisively, everybody just falls in line. Yeah. And one clear example was the case of the sacking of the DSS Director General. When it was done speedily and immediately, everybody began to, you could see there was a shift in the atmosphere. Everybody began to take cover and were behaving. But as it seemed to relax again, then everybody went back to business business as usual. So we should pay attention to who becomes number one. It is critical because even if the man at the local government knows that the man at the top, and you see, talking about the administration of justice, I have to go back there for a minute. It's not rocket science, really. It's not. It can be done. It's not angels that will do it. It's human beings. Take the welfare of the judges first, and say every judge now, your salary is tied to that of the legislature, for instance. A high court judge earns the same thing as local government, House of Rep. Court of Appeal earns the same thing as House of National Assembly, senators, Supreme Court, and whatever you guys are earning, the judges will earn. It will reduce the propensity for any corruption to start with. Move to the next level and say, okay, now judges, we've had this before. Anybody that is now caught with his hand in any till will be sanctioned. But you are going home with enough. Let's stop all this.
Anyone whose hand is caught in the till will be tilted. Okay. Well, Prof, same issue of 2023. You've said it more than once that we seem to be looking more up than down. But do you blame the Nigerian who is more interested in what's happening at the top as opposed to what's happening closer to them? Because, hey, it would seem like over the years since like 1993, many people don't remember who was governor in 1993. Many people don't remember who was governor when they were growing up. They just remember, okay, this fellow was the president. Who even remembers the member of the House of Assembly representing them?
Did I ever know that?
The question, do I blame Nigerians? I know this is unpopular, but I actually do. As a matter of fact, I know people don't like to say it. We always like to talk about leadership. But the citizen, in terms of citizenry, is also a duty that many of us fail to absolve.
The office of the citizen.
The office of the citizen. I've said elsewhere, I wrote an essay some years ago, quite a long time ago, in which I said, on the day in which people are inaugurating the president and the governor, let individuals go into their room, take the mirror and inaugurate themselves. And say, I, the citizen, in these next 4 years, this is what's going to be my duty. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why I blame citizens. On a philosophical level, we've not really understood that citizenry is a duty, not just a right. And that is a fraud. This idea of thinking that I have the right to vote, I have the right to do it. No, it's actually I have a duty to vote, I have a duty to follow politics. And let me make it more unpopular. If I had my way, I think universal adult suffrage is a wrong move that we did. Rather than consider voting a right, I'll consider it a duty that will be tested. Let us treat, I argue, our voting card like a driver's license, in which you show that you actually understand it, and better still, if you pay your tax. So that when you reason like a proper stakeholder, not somebody that can be bought and sold for peanuts. One of the reasons why I blame the citizens is this. It is true. We tend to forget our local government and our state of assembly because really, most of them don't do anything. Let's be realistic. They're quietly inward. They are cutting deals with governors and presidents because we have these deferential societies. And let's be totally honest. Most of these people are stooges and cronies of those who are in power. So you can't really expect them to do anything when they just came out nominated. They have no track record or declared desire to be local government chairman for programs. So you can't expect magic from that. That is the truth. But if you go around the streets of any of your states, viewers in the country, today, even the most forsaken corner of the street, you see political posters there. And that's how you know how self-centered politicians are. Because when it comes to governors, they don't remember remote areas. But when it comes to politics and campaigning, they remember to get their posters there. So if citizens actually want to sit up, people should stop telling me, they don't even know their name. I tell them, open your eyes, go and read the poster. You will know the person that contested and make note of who won. So let's stop acting as if, we don't even know. I think people need to sit up a bit as well.
Okay.
And by the same token, this is important. As we go near election, let people, as they're going to church and anywhere and must to go and pray today, let them actually say, God, please help me to vote the right person. Let us commit to ourselves to know that there are some candidates where you look at them with the fear of God in your mind. You should know if this person is votable, should be voted or not.
That raises another question, Mr. Kyoshun. It will seem like people are more sentimental in taking decisions, especially along this civic duty, as opposed to being pragmatic, factual, and all of that. What's your take on that? And also, since we're running off, looking ahead, what are the considerations you would propose that people should make
for 2020?
Sadly, I agree with you on that point of that people are sentimental. We always look at it that, is he from my tribe? Is he from my local government? Has he helped me in time past? Beyond looking at what is his ability to deliver. And part of what I believe we should be looking at now in choosing who will lead us in 2023 is that, does this person have the requisite experience? Because you have to look at a person's CV to see what he has done. How did he fare on the job? At federal, is he doing work on a state level? It's sometimes different, a lot different from what you've been able to do at the national level. I will begin to look at what has this person achieved at a national level. Has he seen the depths of the problems we are dealing with? Has he responded to any of those things before? How did he respond to it? Now, what is the person's personal morality or integrity that we're dealing with? Because it is what that person stands for that begins to help you to lead a whole people, right or wrong. But if you don't stand for anything, you will fall for everything yourself.
Oh dear.
Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to look at all the issues we wanted to look at.
So we can't even fall for anything, right?
Extrajudicial killings is also in the forefront of the things that happened in 2022 in light of the burning of Deborah in the north and the recent killing of Bolanle Rahim. Unfortunately, we don't have time to look at that, as well as a number of other things. But that is the nature of live television. Unfortunately, we have to call it quits right now. And I just need to take your last word. Looking forward to 2023 in light of all the things some of the things we have discussed that happened in 2022 in one sentence.
Well, I hope citizens become more prudent and protagonist.
Short and sharp.
Well, while we hope for a better tomorrow, we need to put in our own efforts. Make sure you vote the right candidate. Make sure you are also working with integrity.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dapo Akinyosun, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, as well as Anthony Killer, Professor of Strategy and Development and author Epistles, Reflections on Nigeria. Thank you very much for coming and sharing this time with us on this very special day, the last day of 2022.
Very good to be here.
And you at home, we'll be right back with another interesting conversation to end the year.